The Dutch headquarters of Nexperia has reportedly issued a notice to halt the supply of wafers to its Chinese subsidiary, which would effectively mean that production in China could no longer continue. However, just today, moments ago, Nexperia China released an official statement refuting that claim. You can read the details in the report below. Here are our comments on the situation. First, we believe it's highly unlikely that this was merely a commercial dispute. There are clear political factors involved. If it were purely a business decision, there would be 100 other ways to handle it, replacing the chairman, sending supervisory representatives, or restructuring the board. But they chose the most extreme approach, suddenly freezing equity and halting supplies. And when they did this, they must have known from history that China would react. Of course, there would be a response. Second, the Netherlands is bound to lose in this matter simply because it's operating on a completely different scale. This incident highlights Europe's weakness, a weakness that's honestly shocking. Europe is now the dish on the menu, not the one sitting at the table. It's a painful reality. Take Germany's auto industry, for instance. It nearly had to stop production. That's an absurd situation, almost unthinkable in modern Europe. After decades of peace and comfort, Europe has become complacent and fragile. Finally, in the long run, looking 5 to 10 years ahead, these repeated frictions and conflicts will only accelerate the decoupling of China's supply chains from the traditional Western economies. From China's perspective, the worst-case scenario is this. China may win every battle, but still lose the overall war, the grand strategic game on a global level. Because every time China retaliates and exposes the West's weakness, it also gives the West a reason to wake up and re-strategize. And that, ultimately, is the real risk for China. This is our neutral commentary on the issue. Below is the related report. This report was published on November 2, 2025, early Sunday morning. Nexperia China issued an open letter to its customers, responding to the Dutch parent company's abrupt decision to halt wafer shipments to its assembly and testing facility in Dongguan, known as ATGD, starting from October 26, 2025. In the statement, Nexperia China emphasized that its inventory remains sufficient to meet customer orders through the end of the year, and possibly for an even longer period. According to the announcement posted on the company's official WeChat account, the Dutch parent company's claim that local management has recently failed to comply with contractual payment terms was entirely unfounded. Nexperia China described the allegation as malicious slander against its management team. The letter stressed that Nexperia China had not violated any contract. On the contrary, it stated that the Dutch headquarters currently owes ATGD approximately 1 billion yuan in payments. It accused certain executives at the Dutch entity of serious misconduct, saying they placed personal interests above the company's overall welfare and violated both professional ethics and corporate governance principles. As a result, Nexperia China said they have caused significant losses to the company and its employees and should be held legally accountable. The letter went on to say that the Dutch company's unilateral decision to stop wafer supplies ignored customer interests, breached contractual commitments, and undermined long-standing business cooperation and trust. It described the move as highly irresponsible. Nexperia China reaffirmed that it has built sufficient finished goods and work in progress inventory to ensure a stable and continuous supply to its customers through the end of this year and beyond. To strengthen long-term supply chain security and resilience, the company has activated multiple contingency plans and is accelerating qualification of new wafer capacity. It expressed full confidence in completing this transition soon and meeting all customer demand seamlessly starting next year. Earlier, Nexperia's parent company, Wingtech Technology, stock code 60745.sh, disclosed that on September 30th local time, the Dutch government froze Nexperia's global operations on the grounds of so-called national security. Although daily operations remain ongoing, the company noted that under the Dutch ministerial order and court ruling, it faces temporary adjustments in decision-making and reduced flexibility in resource allocation, potentially affecting operational efficiency. While Wingtech's control over Nexperia is currently restricted, its economic rights as a shareholder remain intact. China responded swiftly. On October 4th, the Ministry of Commerce announced an export control order prohibiting Nexperia China and its subcontractors from exporting certain finished components and sub-assemblies produced in China. The measure sent shockwaves through the global automotive industry. Manufacturers across Europe, the United States, and Japan warned that shortages of critical chips could lead to temporary production halts on some assembly lines. Wingtech's third-quarter report, released on October 24th, highlighted strong semiconductor performance during the reporting period. However, it also cautioned that subsequent developments, including the Dutch government's order and court decisions, introduced uncertainties that could affect the company's semiconductor momentum. If control over Nexperia is not restored by the end of 2025, Wingtech warned it may face temporary downward pressure on revenue, profit, and cash flow. Still, the global supply chain disruption triggered by the Nexperia dispute may be easing. On November 1st, a spokesperson for China's Ministry of Commerce commented on the issue, saying that the Dutch government's improper interference in corporate internal affairs has caused widespread instability in global supply and production networks. The spokesperson emphasized that China, as a responsible major economy, remains committed to maintaining stable industrial and supply chains worldwide. Companies encountering genuine operational difficulties are encouraged to contact the ministry or local commerce authorities. For those meeting specific criteria, China is prepared to grant export exemptions as appropriate.